Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrand. Joining me, as always, my good friend over there in beautiful NYC, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. It's pretty nice. Good 4th. Got some sun. I still look like the Grecian god that I am.
Did you eat well?
Yeah, made some burgers, made some blueberry crumble. I actually put it on the Solid Verbal Instagram story feed.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's become very easy for me because it seems very convenient. So I cooked, I grilled, well, sort of grilled. I pan-made burgers, and it was real easy. And Jody with an eye, a couple coworkers, and their baby came over. He actually played football at Vanderbilt with Jay Cutler. So we talked about that. It was a great time, Ty.
Great.
Nice air-conditioned 4th of July during the nighttime portion. Walked around the neighborhood during the day. You know, real good old person 4th. How about you?
We were active. Did a lot of bike riding and
nice.
Ate well here at the house. So, yeah, very uneventful 4th for us. Hope everyone out there had a good holiday weekend. We've got a fun show ahead of us here this evening. What we've been trying to do once a month is answer questions. And I could say undeniably that after you put out the call on Facebook and Twitter, and Lord knows wherever else to get some questions into the inboxes that we have.
Farmers only. Yeah.
Yeah. We had an unbelievable outpouring of questions. You can tell that people are getting a little antsy for the season to start, Dan.
Correct. Yes. And a wide array of questions, too. Both college football, non-college football. Went to some weird places. Got a lot of food questions. Got a lot of life questions. So we're going to go mostly college football, but I think we'll sprinkle in some good life questions. I think that's reasonable.
We'll do our best to sprinkle in a couple housekeeping notes before we go any further, though. First and foremost, because people have asked and because we've been teasing this now for weeks, for months on end, Dan and I are planning to do a live fantasy things draft at some point next month in New York City. That quote unquote some point has been narrowed a little bit to either August 5th or August 12th. Both are Saturdays. We're still working to firm up the date, still working to firm up the time and the location. But as soon as we have that information, as soon as we have more information about tickets and other particulars, we'll be sure to pass that along to you. But if you're going to be in the area one of those 2 weekends, or if you can be in the area one of those 2 weekends, just wanted to give you an early heads up that that's what we're thinking. We will absolutely make it worth your while and provide more details as they are available. But for the time being anyway, Dan, that's what it's looking like, right?
Yes, this is correct. We will have a proctor for, is that the right word that we should be looking for?
I don't think so, but I like it. I like it.
Proctor's a fun word.
Yeah.
It may be our pal Ryan Nanny, so I hope that it's encouraging even more so for people to come out. The tickets will be very cheap just to sort of cover our costs. I already tried to recruit our pal Adam Amin to come into New York from Chicago. Turned down.
Really?
Turned down. He wanted to make it, but he will not be in New York in early to mid-August, at least as of right now. If he is, we will kidnap him and force him to use his professional skills for free. But it's going to be a really fun time. So we'll have that early to mid-August, and there's going to be really good barbecue and drinks and everything like that available to purchase and have fun with. We'll hang around as long as anybody wants us to hang around to try and say nice things about your teams. And we're going to try to release shirts this month.
Yep.
That's a fun thing. And the place that people can find out about shirts and those little tickets for our live show ahead of everybody else would be?
That would be the newsletter, which you can find if you go on out to solidverbal.com. We've added it to our main menu.
Good.
We also have not sent out a newsletter in a while. We had a gentleman ask us, hey, where's the newsletter? I haven't seen it. We haven't sent it. It's not
more of an in-season thing, yeah.
More of an in-season thing, but we tend to send out the bat signal for things like this. We haven't sent it out yet. Keep subscribing if you want more information on all of that fine stuff. And then the final thing I'll bring up, just because I actually thought it was a cool idea, and it wasn't ours. A gentleman came to us, let us know that he's planning on starting the Solid Verbal subreddit. I'm not sure. I have no clue how any of this stuff works, but He asked if we could put out a call for people who are interested in helping. So we will hook you up with him on Twitter if you're interested in being part of that little community.
Every time I go on, by the way, the college football subreddit and just to see news and stories and everything like that, occasionally somebody will say, "What's a good college football podcast to listen to?" And there are always links, and invariably we get brought up with a number of other really good podcasts, like Podcast Ain't Played Nobody and the Shutdown Fullcast. And people generally have nice things to say. And sometimes people say, "I like it, but Dan's kind of annoying," which means college football subreddit really gets our show.
Yeah, they really
get our essence. So we love the college football community on Reddit. They're good people. Reddit can be a little dicey, but the college football crew is pretty fun.
Agreed. I go a couple times a day. Love the site.
Nice.
On that note, Dan.
Congratulations, Skippy. You've got mail.
You've got mail on the Solid Verbal.
As often as we can, we like to pay homage to those of you who tweet, who Facebook, who Instagram, who Snapchat, who email in to solidverbal@gmail.com. If you find some way, somehow to get in touch with us, let us know the burning questions that you have. There's a good chance this could be our very last one, at least for a while. True. We try to sprinkle in questions as we progress forward, but we've got a bunch of cool shows coming up. We've got our How Recruiting Works show coming up. Man. Currently in production. We've got our show with Bill Barnwell, our mystery show with Bill Barnwell, the bonus episode. And then we've got our History of Solid Verbal show. That's going to round out the month of July a little bit later on this month before we get into previews. So I'm not saying, but I'm saying there's a good chance that there are some questions that won't get answered.
This is true.
Which means we got to rifle through these, Dan, as quickly as we can.
We've had a couple of people ask a similar question. It just makes sense to start with this. We are recording this on July 6th. So right after the 4th of July, right after, people getting together and having fun with family and friends and celebrating the holiday. That's when it seems for some people, attention starts turning to college football and people are getting antsy. Does this make you antsy now that it's just sort of baseball left before college football season? Because I'm not yet antsy. I'm really excited, but I don't start really getting antsy until like a week or two before. I tend to try to enjoy summer because I live in a cold place filled with trash. And the summer is one of the few times where I get to enjoy something different.
Yeah, antsy would be the wrong way to characterize it. In general, I don't get antsy or anxious for a lot of things in life. But what I would say, I'm reminded of that scene in Apollo 13 where the world's getting awfully big in the window. And that's kind of how I feel about the college football season. I can see it fast approaching. We've planned out what our shows are going to look like over the next couple weeks and months. And it's glaringly obvious that it's starting to get in the crunch time where going to have to cram a lot of previews, start putting together preview content and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, not there yet, but I'll be here soon enough.
Okay. First question I have here is from, it looks like Will. Will wants to know, as I look at my sheet, based on preseason expectations alone, what's the best week of college football this year? I have a week picked out. I don't know if you picked out a week today. You had a busy day.
I have actually done research for this question, but not
breaking news
in the build-up to tonight's show.
Right.
So I have a week in mind that may involve Notre Dame, Georgia.
Okay.
That may involve Auburn, Clemson. That may involve Oklahoma, Ohio State. By the way, all three of those games at night. I'm thinking college football week 2.
Yeah, you like that big number 2, don't you?
I like that crooked number, Dan. Give me number 2.
Yes, number 2 is actually surprisingly good this year. A lot of time you have the fall off after exciting non-conference, non-home and home, but neutral site week 1s. And there's some really sneaky good week 1s. I think App State, Georgia is week 1, and that App State defense is fun and dangerous. And you have Alabama, Florida State at night, and A&M, UCLA on Sunday, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, whatever. There's some fun at week 1. I think you're right on with week 2. I have earmarked right here, though, Ty. Week 8.
Okay.
I went through a bunch of weeks. Week 8, as of right now, in early July, you've got a fun Thursday night game, Memphis and Houston. I think at the very least, that looks like it'll be fun, even without Tom Herman. Yeah. Yes. I think we got fun. New offensive coordinator for Memphis. It's Chip Long over to Notre Dame.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. You have Wyoming, Boise State, two really good quarterbacks. Josh Allen may be in a very NFL-y place by then with a lot of hype. Louisville, Florida State, Tennessee, Bama, Auburn, Arkansas, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. We'll see, two new quarterbacks. LSU, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Kansas State, who is expected to be a good deal better this year. Oklahoma State, Texas, could be sneaky fun. Oregon, UCLA, we don't know what to expect. Penn State, Michigan, and USC, Notre Dame.
Wow.
So I've got a lot of good, if not interesting quarterback play. A lot of unknowns with, Brandon Wimbush, with what Michigan's offense is going to look like by then, what Texas's offense under Tom Herman's going to look like, what Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. I guess we have a good idea. But it's a heavy, deep week.
Last year, week 1 and week 3 were loaded.
Yes.
This year, it's a very top-heavy schedule. Again, in that we've got some good weeks to start off the college football season. Week 1 isn't nearly as loaded as it's been the last 2 seasons. Week 3, I don't think nearly as loaded as it was a year ago. Week 2, here's what you got. Again, those 3 games at night: Auburn, Clemson, ND, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. You've also got Iowa State, El Asico.
Asico.
The Holy War in BYU, Utah, Pitt, Penn State, Nebraska, Oregon, Boise, Washington State late at night, Minnesota, Oregon State, which is interesting, TCU, Arkansas, Stanford, USC, and Louisville, North Carolina. So a good spectrum of games, nice depth of matchups there. Week 8 is pretty solid though too. So week 2 and week 8 is the answer, Will.
This is from Quinn the Day, which is not as accurate because Win the Day doesn't exist for Oregon anymore. This is our friend Quinn. Who is the best freshman or sophomore quarterback in the country that nobody is talking about? And he, of course, says Justin Herbert is his pick. Ty, do you have a freshman or sophomore quarterback?
Does a redshirt sophomore count here?
I'll count a redshirt sophomore if they either played somewhat last year, started last year, whatever the case may be, that perhaps is floating a little bit under the radar.
Daniel Jones. I've been talking about him all offseason for Duke. Yeah,
it's a good pick. Around college football, Sam Darnold obviously on the radar, but he himself a redshirt sophomore. Around college football as a whole, there's not too many of them.
Eric Dungy, another name I've mentioned. I think he probably falls in this category.
Jalen Hurts is not under the radar by any stretch, but I think he has been discounted a little bit because of how he finished the season. And I am looking forward, and people are already saying he's being pushed by the true freshman who came in early, Tua Tagovailoa from Hawaii. But Jalen Hurts, I feel like, has attention, but we may be underrating him a little bit with how successful he was as a true freshman in that system.
Okay, but the question was that no one is talking about. I gave you Eric Dungy and Daniel Jones. So far, you've given me Sam Darnold and Jalen Hurts, Dan.
This is true. This is undeniably true. I was going to say Keller Chris, but Keller Chris is a senior. He, to me, feels a little bit under the radar because of his injury. Elsewhere...
How about Alex Hornibrook?
That's pretty good.
He's all right.
Yeah.
Game manager, but, he'll win games for you. How's that?
Helped to lead them to the Big Ten title game. Came up a little bit short, but still sort of fun. I don't know if there's freshmen coming in that I'm very excited about. Would you count Brandon Wimbush? He's not under the radar, but do you think he is? I like him a lot.
I would not count him. I would not count him for this, but I like Wimbush an awful lot. I think he's going to be really solid in that system for Notre Dame. And I think in an era where you've got a lot of guys transferring out because of lack of playing time, Wimbush right now looks like the evil genius who played his long con just right, because the Kaiser Zaire thing went down last year. Both are now gone, and he gets to play a year earlier than expected.
I've got 2 guys that are 100% under the radar at this moment who I believe either redshirted or didn't play a ton last year because of injury. One, and they both might not win the starting job at their school, so I better get this in right now. Jarrett Guarantano at Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah.
Really liked his high school tape. I know that doesn't mean a whole lot, but I like his skill set a whole bunch, and I think coming into a system that does have some momentum offensively, it could be really nice for him. I like his talent a lot. Also, he was super young last year. My second pick, Khalil Tate at Arizona.
Yeah.
He was a little thin, got hurt, but we'll see if he can develop as a passer. He becomes very dangerous, but he is an electric athlete, and sort of in the vein of maybe like a Pat White, sort of not scrawny but lean, but explosive player. Khalil Tate at Arizona. How about that?
That'll play for Rich Rod. Where are we going next?
Yes. Okay, next question. I like this question a lot. This is more vague, or not vague, but bigger picture. If there were an NCAA video game this year, who would you be most excited player-wise? And I'm going to say outside of Penn State, Ty.
Yeah.
To play with in the game.
I mean, the obvious answer is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer.
If you have a truly mobile quarterback in any video game, those guys are virtually unstoppable. And that dates back to like the old Mike Vick era of NCAA of Madden. Lamar Jackson would be a tough one to pass up.
It's generally going to be a quarterback or some sort of multi-tool speedy weapon. Christian Kirk would be very fun to play with some jet sweeps and punt returns. He would be quite fun. Quentin Flowers, who we both love, would be a pretty obvious answer. Looking through playmakers...
I mean, it depends what you're after, right?
Yeah.
If you're after putting up the true pinball numbers, then I think the answer is Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
If you're into the whole freshman development thing, pick Cam Akers in Florida State. Just run every down. Win the Heisman as a freshman.
I'm going to say Ronald Jones in USC has home run ability. I think that could be quite fun. Maybe overshadowed a little bit by Sam Darnold.
All right.
Yeah, that's another
next topic.
Option. Next topic, Ty. Which team currently outside the top 25 has the best chance at finishing in the top 10? So for this metric, Ty, I went ahead and used Bill C's projected top 25.
Okay.
Because I think it's a good combination of different factors to get us a top 25. So just out of the top 25 in this, I'll give you the top 12 or so teams outside of the top 25, and you can tell me which you feel most passionately about. Ole Miss, NC State, Baylor, Boise State, Mississippi State, Georgia Tech, Arkansas, Pitt, UCLA, Kansas State, South Carolina, Northwestern, North Carolina.
Did you say Kansas State?
I did say Kansas State, who a lot of people have projected higher than their projected 35th in the S&P Plus projection.
I could see Kansas State working their way into the top 25. I'm not sure. I actually didn't do a fair amount of research for this one, but a team that came to mind was Notre Dame. I don't know where Notre Dame's at, but Notre Dame seems like the kind of team that... They're
17th in the S&P Plus projection. So they're outside of the top 10.
Right. Yeah, I could see them. Kansas State. You mentioned NC State. I'm intrigued by NC State this year.
If they had a better schedule, I would probably roll with UCLA. Their schedule is not great, but last year's defense was undeniably a top 10 defense in the country, especially that pass defense. You saw the NFL talent that they had on the roster last year under Tom Scrap Bradley. Their defense really took a very nice step forward. A new offensive coordinator, a healthy Josh Rosen. They have Texas A&M early. They go to Memphis, to Stanford, to Washington, to Utah, which is always a hornet's nest at altitude, to USC.
Are they playing any home games, Dan?
They do not play home games. No, they have A&M at home. They have Hawaii at home. It's not a great. They have Oregon at home, which could be advantageous by mid to late October. And they've got a strange letdown spot. The post rivalry game, the post second to or like the second to last week rivalry game. They have Cal after that.
Okay,
I'm not terribly worried about Cal in the first year coach, but I like the staff. But the schedule's not great, or else I'd roll with UCLA. So of this, I'd go UCLA, possibly North Carolina, just because of the strides they've taken these past couple of years in developing quarterbacks.
All right, next topic.
Next topic. Let's go to, I love this question, Ty. This comes to us from our pal Jane Costin. Has Ty's family finally forgiven Dan for his comments regarding the food at Ty's wedding?
No.
Still no.
What have you done to rectify the situation, Dan?
I thought I clarified that I enjoyed my eating at your wedding.
I'm just telling you. I'm telling you in the nicest possible terms that I have made peace with you because you and I, we have a show. We have a business venture here with the show. Other people who aren't as attached, they don't share the same sentiment as I.
Okay.
So if you come down here, I'm not sure you'll be welcome.
I'm going to have a very mature sit down with Mama H and get this all straight.
I didn't say it was Mama H. I'm not naming names here. These are anonymous sources, Dan.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the people you're related to that listen to the show. And Detective Dan Rubenstein on the case. We'll stick with this because we've got a quick answer here. One swell foop or one fell swoop. Has Ty ever had a banh mi?
What was that?
B-A-N-H, banh, space, M-I, me, banh mi. It's a Vietnamese sandwich with French influence.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm assuming that's some Vietnamese dish.
Mm-hmm.
When you said, has Ty ever had a banh mi, I thought you were asking if I've had a bonfire. That might be the closest I come to this one swell foop. I've not had
it.
Banh mi?
Banh mi. I think you'd like a banh mi.
Okay.
It's French bread, traditionally it's, some sort of roasted pork and then cilantro and like spicy mayo, jalapenos.
You introduced me to Vietnamese food, in Austin. There was like a food truck.
Yes.
And we tried Vietnamese something or another, tacos.
Yeah, it was a fusion taco situation.
It was very good. So I'm not opposed to it. I've just not had any exposure to it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Next question. Neither one of us can speak to this with authority, but we're going to try to answer it anyway. From Steve Hagan. Why are SEC fans so over the top? And by that, I assume he means enthusiastic, crazed, that kind of thing.
Okay.
What is your hypothesis? Yes.
You've got a really strong football culture in the Southeast, but I've always felt like there's a shortage of a true alpha NFL team outside of the Cowboys, the Saints, maybe the Falcons. Maybe
the Falcons and Saints are a definite rivalry, but they're in not college towns necessarily. Shout out to Tulane, but
sure, it's just in a lot of spots college football got there first.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Titans, who else? The Jags, the Panthers. These are newer teams. They don't have the tradition of, say, Tennessee football.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you root for an NFL team, and that's cool, but maybe you feel more of an emotional connection to the college game because it's been there longer. There's more of a tradition. Like if you live in South Carolina, Dan, you might be a Falcons fan, but I'd bet money that you've got more of an emotional connection to Clemson or South Carolina.
Yeah.
And then when you factor in the South, there's really a regional identity there that comes into play. People from the South, they take pride in being from the South and cheering on other teams that are from the South. I think all that probably factors in.
Yeah, I think cultural pride in terms of sports elsewhere in the country, the Midwest feels very professional sports driven, as is the Northeast. Certainly, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, there are really fun pockets of enthusiasm regarding college football, but I don't think it's as ingrained. You go to a place like Ole Miss or LSU or Alabama where there's, it feels like it's more steeped in tradition, even if the tradition sort of seems silly to the outside world and to dum-dums from the North like ourselves, rolling the trees at Toomer's Corner in Auburn. There's just something that's sort of woven into the culture that just doesn't exist elsewhere. Doesn't make it better or worse. It just makes it unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
And don't poison other people's things.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's just a general life thing that you should abide by. Next question. We'll go to a different part of the country. Abbott wants to know the MAC conference.
Ooh.
Who you got this year, Ty? Because I got my answer.
Ooh.
You know what side I'm on, Ty?
I'm on the wood side.
I'm on the wood side.
That's right, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Logan Woodside. Give me Toledo.
Mm-hmm.
I desperately want to call them the Mud Hens, but I know that's a minor league baseball team. I know that their real name is the Rockets, but I am rooting for this to be the year for Toledo and Logan Woodside, official quarterback of the Solid Verbal podcast.
Here is a genuine question I have. The Toledo Rocket has no visible eyes because there is a mask on the spaceman mascot.
Right.
How many college football mascots don't have visible eyeballs?
Oh,
because even the tree has eyeballs.
The tree can see.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm not even sure I can name one off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's the unique element of that. I mean, there's a school like Oklahoma where it's just sort of a covered wagon coming out. but you still have people dressed in apparel. Obviously you have the West Virginia Mountaineer, you have humans, you have a live buffalo, you have all sorts of live animals and mascots and costumes. But I would say of the costume mascots in which you can't see the person inside, how many of those costumes don't have visible eyeballs?
Wow. I got
to think about it.
I have to think about it too. What I will say very quickly in passing, I would much rather have a mascot without eyes than a mascot with the eyes of the Clemson Tiger, because that's just freaking spooky.
8-Ball?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't, off the top of my head, can't think of one.
All right. We're going to have to.
So yeah, we're both on the wood side.
Okay. Next topic.
This comes to us from Zach. What are your thoughts on the legalization of sports gambling across the country? Is it good or bad for college football?
Ooh.
I don't wager on college football. What are your thoughts, Ty?
I have no problem with this at all.
Okay.
It's already going on, whether it's legal or not. Granted, you could say that about a lot of things that shouldn't be legal. But in this case, I think you could tax it, you could regulate it. In other parts of the world, you literally have gambling websites that sponsor sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be an adversarial relationship between the league and the gambling entity. The two things that I hear as the most common arguments against legalized gambling is some kind of moral objection to gambling as a whole, not just sports gambling, but just the act of doing so. I don't share that point of view, but I'm not going to try and convince people otherwise. It's a reasonable stance that people have. The second one is more logistical, and I think it's a myth. It's that legalized gambling, or any gambling for that matter, is going to lead to some kind of nefarious, shady activity in sports.
Right.
Point shaving, game fixing, paying off refs. That is not reality, because as you know, Vegas leads the charge against this sort of thing all the time. They know when something's up. They alert the FBI, other authorities, that there might be a fix being called in. So in many cases, that's just not reality. I think you can throw that argument out the window. So I'm okay with it.
I'm mostly okay with it. It becomes a little strange if you are believing in the antiquated notion of amateurism, that these are true student athletes and we shouldn't be wagering on games they're playing. But enough people are making money off of them that I am generally okay. You can already wager on college football games legally, whether it's sort of the weird offshore stuff or you just go to the state of Nevada, go to Las Vegas and gamble. And it also feels to me that with football specifically, and this is different for any number of sports that could possibly be wagered on, like basketball, easier to throw a basketball game when you're one of 5 people instead of one of 22, 25, 27 people, unless you're the quarterback. And that becomes sort of obvious on a certain level. But I think I'm okay with it at this point in 2017. I'm not sure the direct harm it's going to do.
You can argue that Florida's quarterback has been throwing games for the last 2 years, and they still find a way to play in SEC championship games. So
this is an email or a tweet, I think, from our friend Jake, who wants to know, not surprisingly, I know where he's going with this, when does a team go from, quote, having success to, quote, elite college football program?
Ooh, wow.
This is a very sports radio question.
Yes.
But it's early July, and we will entertain such questions. He is a Washington fan, so I assume he secretly wants to know how far away is Washington from being a, quote, elite college football program, a name that people like Colin Cowherd, 11 elite college football programs from Colin Cowherd. But it blue blood, something that really that is a clear elevating term of college football programs. Right now we have, 8, 10 programs, whatever it is. But I would say, and you can say I'm wrong, the most recent team to make that ascension is probably Oregon. They made the ascension. I don't know if they still are right now.
Sure.
But in making the 4 straight BCS games and national title games, 2 national title games and a Heisman, combined with the brand that they were able to build nationally with the attention to uniforms and facilities and whatever, I felt like they made the closest thing we've had recently to an ascension to that blue blood level. Still don't know if they're there now, but they made the ascension. So what do you think it takes to climb up to being in that sort of that cloud?
By the way, the Oregon example I think is a good one. I was going to use Clemson as sort of another example. Maybe not quite as drastic a promotion.
They had won a national championship before, yeah.
But Clemson has now gotten to a point where year in and year out, they are what I would consider elite.
Yes.
Whereas 10 years ago, that wasn't quite the case. They've won 10 or more games, 6 straight years, if I'm looking at this correctly.
Okay.
They've played in 8 postseason games, if you count the playoffs, and it looks like they've gone 6-2 with a national championship last year. The big thing for them is recruiting has now reached a critical mass. And I think that's the most important thing. You need to have success on the field, which they've clearly had last 6 seasons. You need to have success against prime competition, which they've done in the offseason before a national audience.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, their recruiting has now reached a critical mass where they're not quite Alabama. They're not quite getting whoever they want, but they're getting there. The program has now started to kind of recruit for itself. And I think that's the X factor here in getting to elite status, where you can turn over a quarterback, you can turn over defensive talent at all 3 levels of your defense and still feel pretty good about being potentially a top 5 team entering the following year.
I would say that there has to be some sort of broader big picture element to not just on-field success, but there has to be some sort of brand association with your program as a top of the mountain program. And I think undeniably Clemson is there. I think in having a high-profile player like Deshaun Watson, Taj Boyd before him, churning out NFL players, becoming a program that like year in and year out, like, oh, I need to watch the Clemson Florida State game. That they sort of became must-watch in their own way. And I think, Dabo is he's an outsized personality. So there's the figurehead factor. I think Clemson is there. What about a school like Penn State? So Penn State historically is that program. On the field recently, no. So would you group them because of both brand and on-field product right now? I wouldn't.
No.
Is there any team in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State and Michigan? I don't think there is.
Probably not, no.
I think Nebraska was. I think Wisconsin's closer than people realize in terms of the year in and year out brand. Wisconsin has that brand of like the big burly offensive lineman and the running game, whatever. Russell Wilson certainly helped it briefly. In the Pac-12, whatever you think of Oregon and basically USC, Washington's problem is they are so far removed geographically and there isn't a ton of flash yet. I think they're going to build on what they did last year this coming season. I think there's a very good chance with an excellent coach in Chris Peterson that they can reach the point where they are just an understood West Coast power like they were in the early 90s. But I think there's a ways to go.
Okay.
And I think Stanford is secretly there.
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is crazy to think about, Ty.
They're good.
Who in the SEC?
Well, Alabama, obviously. I think LSU.
I think they're 100% in that group. That's it for me. Florida, sure. The recent on-field has been a disaster, but winning 2 national championships in the past 11 or 12 years, pumping out a Heisman winner, the most polarizing player in Tim Tebow, perhaps, of the past decade, 20 years, whatever. Yeah, I think Florida, Alabama, LSU are in a tier alone within the SEC. Hope it changes. Hope more teams are added, but that's where I stand right now. That's the sports radio question of the day. The second part of his question is Tex-Mex, best of both worlds or culinary Frankenstein? I think he means Frankenstein's monster, Ty.
Yeah,
if we're gonna be specific.
Sure.
How do you feel about Tex-Mex?
I'm fine with Tex-Mex.
Are you being specific to Tex-Mex or Mexican food? There is a difference.
There is a subtle difference, right? I'm probably being more specific to Mexican food, but I have to believe that Tex-Mex isn't too much a departure from that.
It's basically Mexican food, but with a layer of greasy, orangey, yellow cheddar cheese.
So that's fine. I'm fine with that.
I've been slow to it, but I've learned to appreciate it. Queso con chorizo, stuff like that. Wonderful. That's great. It's a lot of enchiladas and fajitas. It's all good.
All right.
So I'm fine with it.
Let me jump in here.
What do you got?
Brett sent us a question that I thought was actually very thoughtful. And he says, I have a question. and it concerns allowed scholarship quantities and teams losing players. Wouldn't a team consistently, quote, losing a lot each year actually be a sign of success in player development, where a signing class gradually develops, moves up the ranks to become starters, and then leaves as a class? Then repeat and repeat. I believe some would call this reloading. Could you talk a little bit about player development versus player turnover? Dan, this is a great question.
Sure.
It's an excellent point. His implication is basically that turnover does not equate to a team taking a step back.
Necessarily.
Right. At this point in the year, turnover is really one of the few data points we have that can be predictive for the coming season, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the X factor here is coaching, and not just head coaches that everyone knows about, but I'm talking coordinators, position coaches, strength coaches. This is where the sausage gets made.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to tell me that Brett Venables has to rebuild the defensive line, I feel a lot better about it than if you tell me Brian Van Gorder's got to rebuild the defensive line.
Yes. New defensive line coach for Clemson, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you understand the point. I think this is where coaching really fills in a lot of the gaps. If you do have a lot of turnover, I feel a lot better about it and what it means for your program moving forward if I know you've got someone who has historically developed that position.
Yeah, I think it's a context thing. If you're losing players every year, it most likely means that you're sustaining success and players are leaving early and you've developed players. And I think the big thing with losing starters, it's a bit of a misnomer because when you're a program like Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and you're winning games like 49-14, you're getting rotation players a ton of playing time. And I think that's the sort of secret sauce is a lot of guys on these teams are not stepping on the field for the first time, even though they're technically, quote, first-time starters. So they get time as 3, 4 on the depth chart into games. They get used to the game speed. They get used to getting hit. They get used to what the competition is like. And then they step in and get more playing time. I also think defensive starters, especially up front, replacing them if you're recruiting somewhat well, defense is much more about effort than it is necessarily precision, like it is on offense. Route running, understanding the timing of playing offensive line. And if you get guys in there who you know will be enthusiastic, you know who will wrap up. I mean, tackling, you're basically fighting for your life every play in a big conference. If you're a weak side linebacker with, Darius Geist or Royce Freeman or Christian McCaffrey coming at you. And if you are able to play with sustained energy, it doesn't matter as much that you're a first-time starter. You play with sustained energy because of good coaching, good preparation. You're there, you're trained, you've had time perhaps as a rotation player the year before. So yes, teams that year in and year out are replacing and reloading players, it's a good problem to have, and they're probably recruiting well. That said, there are certain programs where players leave every year because they don't like it there. They don't like the coaches. There's just turnover. That's a bad sign. But yes, I think it's sort of a misnomer, especially on defense, the number of returning starters. But offensive line starters is a pretty nice metric, I think, though.
I have another question here for you, Dan.
Hit me.
What's the best mattress on the market today?
Please tell me it's Casper, because that's my feeling.
It is Casper. Have you taken yours out of the box yet?
I have not.
Oh,
I know. I've slept on a Casper mattress before. I know. It's more of a product. You saw my apartment. There's not a lot of room. We got to figure out a situation.
This is the road to divorce, Dan. You just got married.
We're sleeping all right.
Well, I'll tell my story again because it's 100% true. Casper was gracious enough to send us a mattress to try out. I haven't sent it back. I was having all sorts of issues with the old mattress that we had. Back was bothering me, was waking up in the morning. My shoulder was dead. My hips felt out of alignment. Just a physical disaster, and not just because I'm getting older. I started to realistically think that it had something to do with the mattress. And so I was in the market. They sent us a new one. And I'm not kidding. It's been inside the 100-day grace period that they give you. And all of those physical ailments have left me in the morning. I feel like $1 million. I'm sleeping better. The solid wife, Kate, she agrees that the old mattress was sort of a problem that we didn't even realize until we got Casper. Real world customers have said that it's like sleeping on a brioche. Brioche. Is that brioche? Brioche, yeah. And
brioche bun, a very soft bread.
Also like being cradled by the tinkling of baby laughter in the moonlight.
Wow.
If you write that, you are a special human being on a public website. But people have done it. People feel very passionate about it, Dan. Casper will sell directly to you. They eliminate the commission-driven inflation prices if you go out to a mattress place. It couldn't be easier. You go online, they deliver it to your door in a very compact box. It's a heavy box, Dan. But it's a compact box.
It's great that they get it in there.
It's incredible. It's magic. I don't know how they did it. Whether you're in the United States, the UK, or Canada, they offer free delivery, free returns, and like I said, a 100-night risk-free trial period. They know how important it is to truly sleep on a mattress before committing, so they give you that 100-day grace period to check it out. And they say, hey, look, you spend 1/3 of your life on a mattress, you might as well make it count. Now you can get $50 towards any mattress purchased by visiting Casper.com/verbal. Casper.com/verbal. Use the code verbal, VERBAL. Casper.com/verbal. Offer code verbal. $50 off any mattress purchase. Terms and conditions do apply.
Ty asks our next question. This comes to us from a gentleman named Ty.
Oh.
If Wyoming has another good year, that's right, we're deep diving those Cowboys.
Yeah.
Could Craig Bull be looking at offers next year? Nebraska, possibly, where,
all right,
of course, he spent a number of years.
Right. Let's pause for 1 second here.
Okay.
Craig Bull was notable on our show last year because
when he is wearing a headset, his head has the exact shape of the inside of the Oregon O.
I didn't believe you until I saw it myself. But there is a congruence there.
It's a racetrack.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yes.
So he, of oval-shaped head, could he be looking at offers next year, Dan?
Somebody who has been really, really successful at infrastructure. That's how you sustain success no matter what level. And obviously had the success at North Dakota State, finding, diamonds in the rough, developing an NFL quarterback, perhaps 2 NFL quarterbacks with Josh Allen at Wyoming this year, turned Wyoming, I think, from 4 wins to 8 wins in a couple years, went 4 to 2 to 8, whatever, and has built something pretty special. They beat Boise State last year in a wild game. So obviously his time at Nebraska is interesting with a coach that I don't think a lot of fans are fully behind at the moment for Nebraska, but I don't think Mike Riley would be out after this year, even like a disastrous 4-8, 5-7 type campaign for the Huskers. So I think it would be a little while before Nebraska opens up, but I could see perhaps a Big Ten team, if Mark D'Antonio were to retire, somebody like that, maybe taking a chance on him. Illinois, if Lovie Smith doesn't work out. But he's 59, and at a certain point, if he's into his 60s, how likely is he going to be to take a job that requires another? So this would be the 3rd full rebuild from the ground up. I don't know. I'm not in my 60s, Ty.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I think it would be, yes, if say, here's the question for somebody like Craig Bull that he could step into and I think be successful pretty quickly. What if Pete Carroll retires for the Seahawks and they hire somebody, I don't know, who's already in that city, like Chris Peterson? Then I think his name starts being floated for a huge job that's somewhat in the region. I don't think Craig Bull would take like Arkansas or Ole Miss. I don't think there's the fit there.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a good landing spot for me,
Right. And maybe Wazoo, maybe I don't know, something opens up, Mike Leach goes back to the Southwest somewhere. But I think Wazoo is pretty happy with Mike Leach.
All right.
But, a job like that I think would make a lot of sense.
Okay. I have a question here.
Please.
On a much, much different note. This one comes to us from a gentleman who I think asks a very thoughtful question, college football related, marriage related.
Oh, here we go.
This one comes to us from Chris. And he said that he struggled to watch as much college football as he could when he was dating his wife. He was always pressured to quote unquote do something on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Now he's married. Now we bought a house. Does that mean I'll be able to watch more college football? It's a great question.
Hell of a question.
I have lived this life, Dan. Chris, I have lived this life for the last few college football seasons. This and only this is why I started alerting people about the window of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Window of opportunity. Listen for it. Live it. I'm going to continue doing it this season because, Chris, it's not about you anymore. Your wife, she's got her right to enjoy a weekend too. The trick is getting out ahead of things. The trick is knowing on a Wednesday night or a Thursday morning when you've got the window to do the other things so as to maximize the time on your Saturday you do have to watch the best games at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, working in your favor, I think, is the fact that you just bought a house. Because if you bought a house, you spent a lot of money. You and your missus might be tightening the belt, a little more cost conscious. Cook in, enjoy your Saturday inside your new home. That could be your case. Just to, at a minimum, keep college football on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the secret to really unlocking the optimal viewing experience this fall is the window of opportunity. Knowing in advance when you can get out, when you can do those things that your missus wants to do, and still be around to watch the big games of the day.
I say scrap Sunday entirely. Open up your schedule every Sunday. The NFL is trash. Just ignore it. Figure out really fun, interesting date night plans Friday night. I think your window of opportunity, maybe be productive around the house, around the new house Saturday morning. Maybe only half watch game day, quarter watch game day. Clean up. In my very limited experience as a married person, Ty, clean places makes everybody in a good mood, right? Does that sound reasonable?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. I would also say if you've got a house, there's a good shot you might have a new kitchen, a new grill outside. I would figure out some sort of cooking plan for the fall. Like, let's experiment. Let's do barbecue stuff one week. Let's maybe go healthy another week and sort of set a game plan, football term, Ty. It's an activity that the two of you can do together. Invite people over. Sometimes when people have a new house, they like celebrating. They like partying. They like having a good time, enjoying guests. Make those plans ahead of time.
Yeah.
And say, this fall, we're doing X, Y, and Z. And in the morning, Saturday mornings, we're cleaning. On Sunday, we're going for bike rides. You know all about that, Ty. You probably have a squirt bottle. You're squirting all over the place, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So the key is to form a weekend plan and not just say, every Saturday I'm watching football, too bad. That, I think, is the key. We have another question that's sort of tangential to this as well.
Oh?
This is from our friend Dan, longtime listener.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to recuse yourself, and that's totally fine.
Okay. Which question are we talking here?
Our friend Dan says, and this is tangential, at what age can I stop going to my niece's birthday party?
Oh, this one. Okay.
I say 5. At that point, she can have a party with her friends. Now, this can apply to college football season, also applies the rest of the year. But certainly, if you are a grown person, if you're an adult, spending a Saturday afternoon at a park with a bunch of 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, who you don't really know other than your relative, may not be the first or second or 17th choice you have for how you're going to spend that weekend day. You've worked a long week. Maybe that's not the first thing you want to be doing. But I recognize that there are solutions and compromises to all problems. And this isn't really a problem. If this is your only problem, life is fine. I would say go out of your way to say, oh, wow, there's great college football afternoon. The party's at 1, because generally little kid parties are in the afternoon, right? They're not staying up late. They're not doing late parties. So they're in the morning, they're in the afternoon, whatever. It's a great afternoon of college football. You say, no, I love my niece. I'm going early and I'm gonna play basketball with her. I'm gonna have a tea party with her. I'm gonna do something. Go out of your way to get out ahead of it. Just like you were talking about, preempt. So maybe the party's called for 1 to 4 and it's a princess party. There's some pizza, there's some ice cream cake. That's fine. It's a good time. Go at 12:30, maybe help set up, have some one-on-one time, enjoy yourself, take some pictures, take a selfie, give a big hug, or maybe say, listen, I'm going to hang out for an hour because I wanted to stay home, but no, this is important to me. I'm going to hang out with Allison. She's great, but then I'm going to come back and watch football. I think the key is in preempting, Ty. Show up early. Go Friday night and hang out then. Go Saturday morning a little bit early. Go a little bit early, hang out, show you care, but also preempt and schedule.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself of this one, Dan.
I know you are.
I've got 5 nieces and nephews under the age of 8. And
sure.
I love going to all their parties. It's difficult for me to try and craft a strategy to get out of them.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I love going to all of their parties. It is one of my favorite things to do in life. Family is number one, always.
No. I'm not reading off. No, I'm not reading off a script here.
Ty, blink 3 times.
I'm being very genuine here.
Okay, no, I know. I believe this.
I'm being very genuine here. Usually I feel like a jackass when I show up and I'm in the corner watch ESPN.
Yeah, see, that's no good
phone.
for anybody, right?
I know, but I do my best to try and make both work. Obviously, our circumstance here is a little bit extreme in that we have to pay attention to these games because of what we do on Sunday mornings. But I don't know, Dan, maybe like 15. Maybe whenever they get too old for you to be cool, at that point, can you stop going? But for the meantime, I'm cool with going. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
What do you think about, this is not anything to do with your life. What do you think about my strategy of preempting?
I think it's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
I think it's very thoughtful. I think it's important, especially in their formative years, that you put the effort forth to let them know that you care about their birthday.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good play. If you can pull it off, Dan, Dan, so be it.
I don't have the same problem because this is also the day job. So
correct.
Jody with an I knew before. I was like, listen, Saturdays are Dan work days in the third person. But yes, I think the preemptive thing, because I really like Jody's family. I really like hanging out with them and they know the deal. So I make every effort I can. And it's honestly not that difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my strategy for Dan.
All right. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go to only a couple more questions. Should Michigan State be worried about program stability because of a bad 2016?
Yeah. Wow.
What is your long-term prospect for the Spartans? Are they in a good place? Obviously, they weren't built in a number. Every team can't do what Alabama does. Michigan State, are you worried?
A little bit.
Okay.
It was a bad year for Michigan State. And there's a whole legal side to it that we won't get into. That was particularly troubling. But as it relates to football, 3-9 last year with a relatively experienced team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the rub. Because this year, they're a lot less experienced. And probably-ish a borderline bowl team, if all goes well. I think 2018 is probably the year that they start making noise again. I'm not ready to start worrying now, but if it's like a 5-7 season and we don't see a lot of strides forward by the end of the year, I could see this being more of a relevant talking point as we enter 2018.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, Michigan State has always been a team, and they've recruited as they've gotten better and have gone to Rose Bowls, whatever. They've recruited better. 2 and 3 stars became 3 and 4 stars. And that is a surefire indicator that the brand has come up, that Mark D'Antonio and his staff, and even weathering some changes, Pat Narduzzi going over to Pitt, they've still resonated with high school players. And, it's tough in the state of Michigan when you have such an outsized personality recruiting so well with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. But I don't think they're in a horrible place. I think it's so difficult to maintain 8, 9, 10 win, 11 win seasons that you are due for a lull. You are due for a dud of a year. Maybe the players don't come together as well as other squads have. Maybe the coaches and players are on different pages. And, everybody's at fault when the season goes to the 3-9, 4-8, 2-10 level. So I'm not selling on Michigan State. I still think there's a lot there. Mark D'Antonio is not somebody who I think a lot of smart people will continue to underestimate, but I think it's fair to sort of recalibrate expectations with Michigan State's future.
All right, I'm going to go rapid fire here.
Let's do it.
Around a bunch of questions that we haven't addressed yet. What is your favorite non-sports video game, Dan? Real quick.
Tiger Woods Golf.
How dare you? Non-sports.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
All right, I'll go Mario Kart.
I love the Mario.
Or anything in which I get to fly a plane or a spaceship around and shoot at things.
Mario Kart for which system?
Currently the Switch is pretty cool.
Oh, You got the Switch?
I have the Switch, yeah.
You like it?
I like Mario Kart on it, yeah.
I'm an N64 Mario Kart guy, but that's okay.
Question here about the Big 12. We had a question about Texas and if they're going to upset anybody this year, if they'll be better. Also had another question regarding the Big 12. Will we see 3 2-loss teams in the Big 12? Which I think is an interesting question, because Oklahoma has to replace a lot. Oklahoma State's a liability because of the defense. TCU still has Kenny Hill. So I think the answer is yes, absolutely. We could see 3 and 4 teams with 2 losses in Big 12.
There's nobody I'm putting my foot down for in the Big 12 right now. Maybe outside of Oklahoma, but not even positive about that. I think it's going to be a wild year in the Big 12, and I'm going to stand by what I said a few weeks ago when we last talked about this. The team Texas has the best chance of upsetting, so somebody that's probably ranked in the top 15 or 20, based on circumstance early in the year. I would have liked it better for week 1 or week 2, but USC has Stanford the week before Texas. I think that's not a great body blow spot for the Trojans, who don't have a week off all year, but especially early on. I think that may be the spot, especially given Tom Herman and his ability to lead teams to upsets over more talented teams in September.
Let's go back to Abbott.
Please.
He's a true patriot for asking this question. He's talking about sandwiches, Dan.
I'm ready.
A topic near and dear to your heart. His dream is to one day open a sandwich shop. If you had a sandwich named after you, what would it be or what would be in it? Anything goes. It is an interesting question. Mine would obviously be the Big Hog. I think that goes without saying. But if you had a sandwich shop, what would be your strategy for naming the sandwiches in your shop?
I'd probably name them after comedians, actors, maybe friends. My specific sandwich would be called the Danwich, obviously.
Sure.
We're talking about roast turkey, spicy sopressata, maybe a spicy aioli, a spicy mayo, a sriracha aioli of some kind.
A donkey sauce.
Yeah, please never say that again on this show.
Right.
Thinly sliced lettuce, like razor thin. The thinner the lettuce is sliced, the better. We're talking dill pickle slices and probably some mustard and an option to get a side of marinara to dip in, not tomatoes.
Anything but tomatoes for you.
Anything but tomatoes. So I'm going with that spicy, sour, crisp combination, probably on some sort of like French baguette, French roll, something like that.
I think it'd be fun to name sandwiches after older or obscure college football players.
Okay. So who stands out to you?
I mean, nobody stands out to me per se, but if I could go into a sandwich shop and order the Ned Bolcar, that'd be pretty fun.
I think you just got to go last name. The best old last names, like the Entman after Steve Entman would be great.
Okay. Let's go to...
Only lineman.
Okay, that works. Yeah. Along the lines of food, what is the most overrated food, Dan?
The most overrated food?
My answer is sushi.
I disagree with that.
I'm not a sushi fan at all.
Overrated food? Burgers.
Yeah.
I love burgers, but they're fine.
All right, another food question. What is the best tailgate food? And then also a question here about what is the proper duration for a tailgate? What's the best time to tailgate? A bunch in here. Let me talk about the time to tailgate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best kickoff for a tailgate is a 3:30 game because
with you,
you're not peer pressured into getting there early, and if drinking's your thing, cracking one open at 8 a.m. You've got time to do that if you're interested. You've also got time to get yourself in the proper headspace before a game starts, and there's probably enough time to come back afterwards and toss the pigskin around, talk the game through with some of your buddies. So 3:30 for me is the proper kickoff time for a good tailgate. As for the best food at a tailgate, maybe I'm biased because of my Pennsylvania roots, but a good cheesesteak.
Sure.
At a tailgate, grill up some peppers and onions, some Amoroso rolls. That's where it's at for me.
I think you're right on, Ty. I think the 3:30 thing is right. You can get there as early or as late as you want. If you want to be there in the morning, just chilling out. If you want to get there at noon or 1 and just eat and go into the stadium, also workable. The keys to good tailgate food, I've tailgated at probably 35 or 40 places now. You want a delivery vehicle and you want structural integrity. So by that I mean some sort of doughy something with meat inside. So whether it's tortillas, whether it's bread, whether it's rolls, whatever, and you don't want something that's going to fall apart on you. So barbecue is great. Give me the brisket in a sandwich. Give me the sausage in a tortilla. Give me something. You want pita bread with pulled pork and slaw, whatever. Wonderful. That's a great idea. I don't want to be using forks and knives. I don't want to get my hands crazy dirty if I'm reaching for beers, if I'm reaching for cookies, if I'm throwing a football around, if I'm playing cornhole. I want a delivery vehicle and I want structural integrity. So to me, the greatest possible tailgate food would be like brisket tacos. You're mixing the South, you're mixing the West Coast. Nothing better than that. Get some pico de gallo, get some salsa, get whatever you need. Brisket tacos, some hot corn tortillas. You're in a great place.
Somebody asked us for an under-the-radar Pac-12 school to go and tailgate and watch a game.
Under the radar Pac-12. Well, Washington's really fun, but they themselves as a team are not under the radar because it's on a lake. Stanford is very chill, and you'll get to watch good football. But in terms of having a fun atmosphere, at least early on in the season, if they're not terrible, Arizona's really fun. Tucson's out of the way, and I hope they're better this year, but good food options, ample spacing. Tucson itself is fun as a town. It's pretty hot, so they have their games at night, so it's a later game. The clientele, Ty, attractive.
Yeah, I've heard.
A lot of attractive men and women going to Arizona games. So it's a good time. I would say under the radar. My answer is Arizona.
All right, got a question here. Will we ever see a team in college football that subscribes to the never punt philosophy?
I wish, but no. There are too many people second guessing and questioning boosters, assistants, presidents, whatever. It's a great strategy. I think we're going to get closer to that. I think teams will be more mathematically sound about going for it on fourth down on the opponent's side of the field. But no, the never punt philosophy, I don't think will make it.
It's too risky in a profession, coaching, that has too much turnover and too much money.
I don't even think it's risky. I think the math is generally on the side of somebody doing that, but it's risky in terms of people understanding what you're doing.
All right, rank these 4 vacation spots, Dan. Beach, a foreign country, a city, and the mountains.
Foreign country, city, beach, mountains.
Okay, I'm writing these down. I'm going to go beach, foreign, city.
Foreign beaches are great.
Yeah, if we could get like a merger of the two, that'd be cool. I'll go beach, foreign country, city, and then the mountains fourth.
Next year, we're doing a live show in Barcelona. We're going to get Ty some jamon.
Beautiful. All right, let's close out on this, Dan. We've covered most of them. We couldn't get to the hipster team. We couldn't get to lost rivalries and bringing back old alumnuses or alumni, as it's known. Somebody wanted to know about the single moment of joy.
Single moment I like this question.
A really cool question from Matt. He said, what single moment defines the official start of college football for each of you? The first kickoff, first Corso headgear pick, your team's first game. Further, what single moment do you look forward to every Saturday in the fall? What's that little moment that still brings you all so much joy after all of these years?
Two-parter, Ty, and I'm sure you have an answer.
Yeah.
First one, waking up that first Saturday morning. That first Saturday morning, and it's not about your own team and the hope that you have for the fall. It's just saying, this is the first Saturday morning of the college football season, and that's the greatest thing ever. Let me get some breakfast. Let me turn on game day. Let me just get in this moment. So that's the 1A. 1B is when your team lines up for the first kickoff, either kicking it off or receiving. That moment of just like, here is the potential energy of the season that's about to get kinetic. Science terms.
Okay. For me,
what about you?
For me, it's Corso and the headgear.
Yeah, it's super fun.
You know what? It's been tried and true, and maybe it's a bit trite at this point, but it's never not amusing for me. I always smile. I always chuckle when I see it. And also on the flip side, on game day,
the Cheez-It Real Fan Cam.
Beyond that, Ronaldo making me cry.
Sure.
I think it was Jimmy V who once said that you should laugh and cry every day. That's a full life. So it's a full Saturday if you get the laughter of the headgear and then the crying from either Ronaldo or Notre Dame's defense, one or the other.
Here's my 1C. The first time I hear, Dan, Ty, I need picks of the week. That's a special moment. And that's 100% true. When I hear that for the first time, I think to myself, all right, let's do this.
I will be jazzed up for that first preview show that we do.
Sure.
100%. I always do. I always get pumped up for that.
You know what bums me out about game day being that moment, though? Is coming to your sit hey. I was like, oh, we've been waiting all year. And we get Cowboy Troy. Great.
Again, what do you got to do? You got to go out to solidverbal.com. You got to sign up for the newsletter. There, we will give you information about the t-shirts, which we're going to release at some point. The live show, which again will either be August 5th or 12th. We're still working on the date and the time and the location and the moderator or the proctor, if you will, for our live Fantasy Things draft, which will be somewhere in the good old New York City. Mm-hmm. Elsewhere, we are now available on Spotify. I literally got the email as we were recording.
Love Spotify.
We are now on Spotify as well. So check us out there. Or go on out to iTunes, or check us out on Google Play, or anywhere fine podcasts are sold. You can find the Solid Verbal. Every little bit helps. If you'd like to write a review or give us a 5-star rating, all that stuff helps us as we now build towards the college football season. We've got some cool stuff coming up, as we've mentioned time and time again, with our How Recruiting Works show, with our mystery show with Bill Barnwell, with any of our preview shows, or with the much anticipated History of Solid Verbal 10 years in show, which we're going to do, I believe we're going to drop that July 26th.
Yes, that sounds right.
A lot of fun stuff here on the horizon. And who knows what pops up between now and then. We've always got things on the horizon here in the Verbal.
True.
So, for that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks again for listening to the show. Subscribe, tell your friends, keep sending in those questions and comments. We will catch you all in a week. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.